Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And I hope you enjoyed that very beautiful song that has become the anthem of the demonstrations in Iran. So today is about celebrating International Women's Day, and kicking off today, we are showing solidarity with women and girls that are courageously taking a stand against an oppressive regime in Iran. We have such a wonderful lineup for you today, some incredible speakers with so much expertise on this topic. Just so you are aware, this event is going to be streamed on Rahait Jan TV in due course, and we will send out a confirmation email when that will be aired. So to introduce myself, I'm Payzee Mahmood. I'm campaign manager at IKWRO Women's Rights Organization, and it is my absolute pleasure to moderate and host this conversation. We're going to start with the speakers kicking off. We will then go into a Q&A and a discussion, and we will leave with some actions that we can all take from this conversation. So I'm now going to hand over to my wonderful executive director, Diana Nammi, to kick us off. And if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat. We will get to them in the Q&A. Thank you so much, and please do enjoy. Sorry, Diana, you're on mute.
Yes. Thank you, Payzee. It is an honor to be with you to mark International Women's Day 2023. We are living in a time when women's rights are under attack across the world, with abortion rights being taken away in America. Here in the UK, women have lost their trust in the police as a source of protection, and women in Afghanistan being denied access to education by the oppressive Taliban. It is a time of huge pain, but it is also a time of great hope, with women leading the fight back. 6 months ago, in September 2022, we learned that Gina Mahsa Amini, a 22-year-old Kurdish Iranian woman, had been arrested and beaten by the morality police in Tehran, Iran. 2 hours later, she slipped into a coma, and 3 days later, she died. News of Gina's murder sparked a uprising revolution all around Iran, aiming to topple the Islamic Republic of Iran. The movement is led by inspiring women with incredible bravery and determination, chanting "Women, Life, Freedom." This slogan is so real to everyone's life that quickly became an international motto, and all around the world, people, in particular women, loudly saying "Jen, Jian, Azadi," or "Women, Life, Freedom." Since then, thousands of people have been arrested, many, including children, have been beaten, tortured, including through rape. Hundreds have been murdered by the oppressive Islamic dictatorship. And now thousands of schoolgirls have been poisoned deliberately, aiming to save their dictatorship. Despite the authorities' brutal attempts to suppress the revolution, it has gained true momentum. Women, Life, Freedom gained a world support from women, from workers' union, and from revolutionaries across the world. We call on the UK government to step up pressure on the Islamic regime of Iran to immediately cease arrest and torture, and to release all the political prisoners, immediately stop execution in Iran, and stop poisoning schoolgirls and boys. The Islamic regime in need is a terrorist regime and should be known as such. We also need to learn lessons from the past. If we look back to the 1970s, then the Shah was in power as a dictator. It is true that on the face of that, women in Iran had more social freedom than they have under the Islamic regime. For example, in terms of how they dressed, but in reality, it was a time far from equality for women. The Shah openly spoke in the media about seeing women as less intelligent and capable than men to lead the country. It was a time of oppression for so many. We had no freedom of speech or expression. There was an extreme divide between rich and poor. People lived in the houses in the tin houses around Tehran. Minority communities were discriminated against. They were prevented from prospering and were persecuted. The Shah Sawak, the intelligence service, controlled the street through fear. People didn't even feel safe in their own home. Prisons were full with anyone who opposed the Shah. Execution were common. Now, as we fight for freedom, it must be for true equality. We must not return to another oppressive dictatorship like we had under the Shah and under the Islamic regime. We must be vigilant to ensure that the revolutions belong to the people of Iran and those in the street. We must not see a repeat of what happened in 1979 when it was decided at the Guadeloupe Conference that the People's Revolution would be hijacked. The United States of America and European partners implanted Khomeini and his Islamists. They undertook a propaganda campaign to inflate Khomeini's reputation through the BBC and other giant media, even put Khomeini's photograph to the moon. We cannot allow for such a deceptions to happen again. We know that there is a real risk that it could be, for example, Western powers have been speaking to the Shah's son and have been looking to present him as an attractive alternative to the current Islamic regime. We cannot not allow this revolution to end in yet another dictatorship being imposed upon us. We deserve a democratically elected government through the rule of councils, one that truly represents the diversity of people in Iran and is held accountable by the population. We need to be strong in our belief that collectively we have the power to topple the Islamic dictatorship in Iran. We must finally see an end to decades of gender apartheid, the oppression of women and human rights. And we need to keep focused on achieving a new chapter for Iran, where we have true freedom and equality. We must not be misled into interference by powers who do not have the best interest of our people at heart. We have come too far now to return to life as it was before. We have seen that we can and will overturn the oppressive Islamic regime and achieve women's life freedom. Happy International Women's Day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana. Such powerful words there, and what a powerful way to start this conversation. I'm now going to hand over to our next speaker. Elahe Amani is a gender, peace and human rights activist. And for all of our speakers, I will put their full bio inside the chat. Please do go ahead, Elahe. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Greeting. Happy International Women's Day. 44 years ago, on International Women's Day, a large number of women took to the streets of Tehran, Isfahan, Tabriz, and few other cities shouted, "We did not do revolution to go back, and freedom is not either Western or Eastern." The flame of resistance has never died out. Fast forward 44 years, with the revolutionary movement of women life freedom, younger women are at the forefront of the revolutionary uprising that has leaped Iran to a point of no return. Iran has seen multiple eruptions of protest over the past years, many of them fueled by desperation over economic difficulties. However, the new wave of protests led by women and girls is started against something at the heart of the identity of Islamic Republic of Iran, the compulsory veil. Women and girls burned their scarves and cut their hairs in powerful display of defiance. Political bodies of generations born and raised in the last 44 years are now revolting against the law depriving them of their choice, security, and fundamental political, economic, and social rights. However, in a span of few weeks, the movement entered new phase and aimed for the structural injustice of a repressive regime. Of course, the compulsory veil is the symbol of control, censorship, and oppression of the Iranian people. However, now the movement is aiming the entire Islamic Republic of Iran. Today, 172 days after the death of Gina Mahsa Amini, and many progressive-minded people around the world are supporting the movements in Iran. Women from Chile to India, from Afghanistan to South Korea came to the street and shouted woman life freedom. Globally, the voice of Iranian people was heard, and they witnessed the brutal and violent attack on women and girls, children. Those who survived the violence perpetuated on them are now being attacked by chemical and endangering their lives. Global community took a strong position on the side of Iranian women on their first against patriarchal oppression and repressive authoritarian regime by the following acts. 1, expressing support at the highest level. On October 26, female foreign ministers of Canada, Albania, Australia, France, Germany, Iceland, Kosovo, Libya, New Zealand, and Norway, and few other states put a strong statement of support for the protesters. Quote, "We as women foreign minister are gathered in solidarity with the courageous Iranian women engaging in their rights of peaceful assembly and advocating for their human rights. We recognize that Iranian women are also fighting for a better future for all Iranian, and we have the moral obligation to support them," unquote. The ministers called for a, quote, "prompt, impartial, and independent investigation into the use of force," unquote, by the Iranian authorities and the repression of demonstrations, including severe internet and telecoms restriction and excessive use of force. Their statement went on as saying, quote, "Woman foreign minister, we feel a responsibility to echo the voices of Iranian women. We condemn the violent enforcement of the chastity law and the ongoing crackdown against protesters in Iran who exercise their rights to freedom of opinion and expression," unquote. Number 2, putting for large legal changes. On September 30th, International Women's Faith Group released a statement signed by more than 80 organizations, activists, academics, and lawyers, including both Muslim and those of other faiths, calling on Iranian government to repeal Article 638 of the Penal Code, which covering dress and punishment, review and change all laws that discriminate against women, and ratify the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. I have to mention, among all the countries in the world, only United States, Iran, and 2 of the Caribbean small islands have not ratified the Convention of Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, which we call CEDAW. Next, and then this statement continues that recent poll shows that 72% of Iranians do not believe the hijab should be enforced by the government. Rather, it's a matter of choice for Muslim women. So these are 5 groups, but they stand on the side in support of Iranian women life freedom. The signatory women organizations are from countries of the Middle East, Asia, Africa, and Latin America, including the Alliance for Inclusive Muslims, Arab Association for Human Rights, and other organizations. Number 3, advocating for the creation of a UN fact-finding mission. In mid-October, as the Iranian government ramped out its brutal crackdown on the protests, women's rights organizations like Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, FEMNA, along with the international human rights groups such as Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and others, began advocating for the UN Human Rights Council to hold a special session on the protests and establish an independent mechanism to investigate potential crime under international law. This session took place on November 24th and resulted in the passage of the UN Human Rights Council of a resolution to set up a fact-finding mission to investigate human rights violations related to the protests, especially regarding women and children. I have to mention that Human Rights Council has just a few days ago issued a link that whoever has some documents regarding the brutality of regime during these past 7 months, they can report it to that link. So, and the last one is the last action of global community. The number 4 is petitioning for Iran expulsion from the UN Commission on the Status of Women. On October 30th, the American non-governmental organization Vital Voice International began a campaign calling UN member states to immediately remove the Islamic Republic of Iran from the UN Commission on the Status of Women, a global intergovernmental body dedicated to promoting gender equality and women's empowerment over its brutal crackdown on the protests. In a statement put out by Vital Voices, the group's president and CEO, Alice Nelson, said, quote, "This is an unprecedented women-led revolution that needs the full support of human rights leaders and organizations aligned with the member states of the UN Commission on the Status of Women and the broader public in order to be effective. The US government has backed the effort to remove Iran from the UN Commission, with Vice President Kamala Harris releasing a statement. And then, of course, I have to say that this is the first time in history that Commission on the Status of Women and ECOSOC has expelled a country. Of course, we have to hold the global community accountable if these atrocities is happening in any other countries on the world, this is setting a history of doing that and expelling, because all the reactionary governments, including Saudi Arabia or other countries, they've been in part of Commission on the Status of Women. So a vote on the issue in the UN was done on December 14, and Iran right now is not a member of the Commission on the Status of Women. Nearly 7 months on, now we see that international support for Iranian women and the protest movement more broadly remains strong, with a diverse array of women organizations issuing a statement of solidarity and support. The International Women's Day, March 8th of this year, UN theme for the Commission on the Status of Women, which I also going to be there tomorrow. It's digital innovation and technology for gender equality, and we have to say the intersection of gender equality and technology. Iranian women have a lot to say about that and add value to the content of this global agenda, because how the activists are utilizing technology to further their cause in the neighborhood collaborations and many other aspects of the activity, revolutionary activity in Iran. Thank you very much for listening, and happy International Women's Day.
Thank you so much, Elahe. It was so wonderful to hear from you, and we absolutely echo your words that we do feel a responsibility to echo the women's voices in Iran. So thank you so much for your contribution there. We are now going to hand the mic over to Nadia. Nadia Mahmood is an Iraqi feminist based in Iraq. Nadia, please do go ahead, unmute, and you can take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this wonderful meeting. Happy International Women's Day. First of all, I want to say that we are women in Iraq, and our organization, Aman Women's Alliance, are very inspired by the movement of women in Iran. And what we have seen in the last few months, the acts from young women, they showed the bravery and courageous women, and their act is very, very inspiring for us. We strongly believe that the regime change in Iran would impact the whole region. And we think that the ability of Iranian people, men and women, to overthrow this regime would benefit the entire population of Iran, and they could have a true, just, and fair political representation of the people to have their, as Diana said, to have through the councils in Iran. And of course, this change would influence the whole region. We are in Iraq, women in Iraq were and are influenced by the Islamic regime of Iran. All the Islamic parties here who are supported by the regime, they use the same politics against women. Since 2003, they tried to impose hijab on women, the same scenario we have witnessed in Iran. And they put women in prisons. Women in Iraq now are governed by the most reactionary, patriarchal system in Iraq. Women now in Iraq, they lack security, safety on political, social, and economic lives because of the Islamic parties in the country. And all these parties are supported by Iran. That's why we believe any change would benefit people and would benefit Iraqi society as well. We are women in Iraq, we are struggle in the same way against the ruling parties. Yes, we are not reaching this great movement. And women in Iran are taking a very advanced role and very important movement, which I think is like significant on international level. And I think the lessons could be learned many lessons could be learned from the experience of women now facing in Iran. And they showed that the women can be very active actors in revolutions, and they could lead even revolutions. So that's very important. I mean, in similar way, women in Iran suffer from poverty. We do in Iraq. In Iraq, only 13% of women are in the labor market. They are ruled by similar laws and the penal code that Elahe just spoke about, which discriminate against women. We have the same here as well. Marriage for a pleasure, polygamy, and many other like practices takes place in Iran, is again repeated in Iraq and other countries. So that's why the change in Iran could influence Iraq, could influence Lebanon, could influence Yemen, and could influence the whole region. For that reason, we think it is so important to support this movement in Iran. We have tried to make a network of women in the Middle East to support this movement in any way we could support by, just to highlight what's going on to women and what they are doing on daily life and daily struggle against the regime. We try to give a voice and make their voice reach to many people in the Arabic-speaking countries, because here there is some anger against the government of Iran, but sometimes people mix between the government and people, and that's what we are trying to distinguish between the people and what they want and their revolutions, their revolution, and between the government. With the government, there are two parties. They are not. We can't put them in one group. So that's what we are trying to do, to follow up the news, to make their voice heard, to gain and some solidarity to this movement. And of course, we are looking forward to their achievement, to their the victory of their struggle. And we hope and we believe, personally, I believe any change in the political change in Iran would be much more influential than even Arab Spring revolutions that happened in the region in the 10 years ago. I think what could happen in Iran, changing the regime, it will sweep the whole region against political Islam. So what women in Iran are doing now is not only changing their regime in their own country, but they could, by their victory, could end this era of the rule of political Islam in the whole region, as it was started in Iran in 1978-79. They could put an end and weakened at least the Islamic movement in the region. So, of course, all of us, we women organizations, our women activists, and men as well, are in solidarity, and our hearts and eyes on women in Iran and men, of course, to reach their goals and achieve the success in their revolution in Iran. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nadia. What a wonderful contribution and such important learnings to take from there. And absolutely, women can lead and will lead this revolution. Thank you once again. Our next speaker is Farah, who is the Chief Executive of Women's Aid. Thank you so much for joining us, Farah. I'm now going to hand over to you.
Thank you very much, and a huge thank you to IKWRO for inviting me to speak. This is an incredibly inspiring panel to be on, and of course it's incredibly inspiring to know and hear about those incredible young women in Iran who are really, who are showing incredible courage and bravery to change the regime and the culture within which they live, as well as their allies, of course. So I think we can take a lot of courage and inspiration from everything that they are doing, whilst also thinking about how we as international women's organisations seek to support the work that they do and support their efforts. So I'm particularly based in the UK, and I'm from Women's Aid. Women's Aid is a national federation of women's organisations that run services for women experiencing domestic abuse and indeed other forms of violence against women and girls and children. For those of you who don't know, the UK has a severe set of concerns with regards to violence against women and children within the context of our country, and our stats and our approach needs a lot and it requires a lot of work to get it to an acceptable place. So, for example, 1.6 million women experience domestic abuse and other forms of violence every year. One woman is killed every few days in the UK, and 3 women every fortnight are killed by a current or former partner. So our concerns are grave when it comes to addressing violence against women and girls, and the severity of it is very much in evidence. Of course, there is a broader context. I come from working on international women's rights, and I just wanted to sort of give you that snapshot of where we are in the UK before sort of setting out our sort of context within which we operate. We know that 1 in 3 women around the world will experience violence. We know that 58% of women murdered across the world are murdered by a family member, and we know that 650 million women are married before the age of 18. We know that 71% of all human trafficking involves women and girls for sexual exploitation. And of course, we know that women and girls suffer the most during conflict and war. And this, I guess, is particularly, we can see this particularly across conflict, war and oppressive regimes. We see this particularly in the current context in Iran, and we know that women are at more acute risk of violence, sexual exploitation and trafficking during these contexts. And we know that 1 in 5 refugees who are female will have had some form of sexual violence experience. We know that women's economic rights still have a long way to go. We know that there's a severe deficit when it comes to women's economic rights vis-a-vis men's economic rights. And we know that women spend twice as much time on domestic work, and therefore in totality across the world work significantly longer hours for significantly less money than men. So I guess all of this together, whilst we're recognising International Women's Day, which I always think needs to be a pause to celebrate everything that has happened, but also a moment to reinvigorate and think about what we must do going forwards. I think all of this just really reinforces the need to come together and work as a global collective sisterhood, because I know that when we do work as a sisterhood, be it a national sisterhood or a global sisterhood, that is when we begin to see the shifts. Diana mentioned at the very outset that here in the UK, there are significant concerns with regards to the way that the police respond to women who've experienced violence. There are significant concerns about imprisonment and how the prison system works, how the court system works, and so on, when it comes to women who've experienced abuse in the home or abuse outside of the home. And we struggle to change these systems. However, we also know that when we come together to really tackle them, we do see change. And I guess International Women's Day is all about what we can do to come together to see change. So, for example, through huge collective effort over the course of 4 years, 2 elections and Brexit, yes, infamous Brexit, we managed to see through a law on domestic abuse, which really changed the way that domestic abuse is viewed, and we hope will change the way that abuse in the home by the family against women and children is dealt with and is recognised. We also have seen this epidemic of neglect and police perpetrated violence across the system. But again, through a collective effort of women calling it out, of not giving up, of holding the mirror to what's happening, of raising their voices, we've seen recognition of that, and we've seen steps. Now, how meaningful they will be, we will see, but we will continue to hold to account as a collective sisterhood. But we've seen those efforts begin to step up, and that would not have been possible had we not worked together as a collective. Internationally, in 2019, we saw the ILO, the International Labour Organization, Convention 140 become ratified and enshrined as a huge global instrument to stop violence and abuse in the workplace, particularly violence against women in the workplace, which is a huge concern. But again, only possible because of a global sisterhood working together to see that come to fruition and then to see that ratified. So I guess I just want to pause and reflect that things could be significantly better. Things are not visibly always getting better, but we are on a real, I think we are on a journey towards progress. But when we come together to work together and have our eye fixed on bigger laws, better laws, bigger institutions, solidarity, the funding that we need, and democracy, and never forget that freedom is our absolute birthright, and we come together to guarantee that, and we work in a collective way, we definitely have more chance of securing the change that we want to see and the future we want to see for ourselves and our daughters. So thank you, and happy International Women's Day.
Thank you so much, Farah. We really appreciate your time. We know you were struck for time today, but thank you so much for taking part and also giving us a picture of what violence against women and girls looks like here, with a call to action on meaningful collaboration. Thank you so much. We are now going to hand over to Nasrin, who is a civil rights activist, who became a civil rights activist when the Islamic regime took over in 1979. Nasrin, I'm going to ask you to join via video. I can't see you just yet. I hope you can see the invitation to unmute and join with your video. Thank you, Nasrin. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. We all are sad for the children in Iran who have been attacked with chemical gas by the regime. It's a revenge on the new generation for participating in the revolution. The new generation in Iran, especially girls, are praised all over the world for their bravery. I would like to highlight the social situation that this generation was raised in. It's true that the 1979 revolution in Iran was suppressed, but the regime couldn't change people who had tasted freedom for almost 2 years between the toppling of the Shah, the rise of the Islamic regime, the torturing and execution of tens and thousands of people. After this point, there were 2 very different lives for each Iranian: public life and private life. In private, people looked and behaved extremely differently to the way they did in public. The regime could put scarves on women's heads in public, but it couldn't force women to wear the scarf in their parties. Despite the fact that the regime raided many parties and arrested people for socializing with the opposite sex, people couldn't abandon their old habits. Or perhaps it was the illegality of makeup and going to mixed gender parties added to the excitement of having a good time. People were fined or tortured for being in mixed parties, but people seemed to be forced into these two moods of behavior because otherwise they would never be able to enjoy themselves. So many of the next generation grew up in families who were against the regime and its misogynistic traditions. The new generation learned to cheat the regime as soon as they started walking. When their hands met with mobile phones, they learned to gather in the hundreds at secret places to hear music and dance. They were arrested at those parties and their parents were called to go and pick them up from custody. The parents of some of the girls were told that their daughters had to go for virginity testing. About 10 years ago, a friend of mine was told to take her daughter to virginity testing. She started screaming at the Islamic police, telling them that it's up to her daughter, whether she is a virgin or not. Since other parents were present, the guards let her take her daughter away. Millions of women have been arrested by the morality police during the last 40 years. They were fined and tortured for simply being women. This new generation has lived a double life since they were small and realized that at weddings, their mothers had their scarves handy in case the party was raided. They overheard their families say to each other, "Relax, we've paid the guards." And they learned that they had to bribe the Islamic guards if they wanted to enjoy things. However, the working class and underclass doesn't have money to bribe the guards. So millions of wedding parties were raided during the last 40 years. The Islamic guards find these people, some of them lost their jobs. And a friend of mine told me about her daughter's wedding, which was raided by the Islamic guards. The guards were arrested, the guests were arrested and were fined. All camera films were confiscated. So instead of having a party, they spent that night in custody. Teenagers gathered in squares in alternative clothes, have met with each other and disappeared just before the morality police arrived. It was with mobile phones that the new generation learned another life is possible. They learned that they've been cheated. It's not only that their civil rights have been stolen, but everything that belonged to them, such as oil and resources in the country, have been stolen from them. The young generation has learned that the dress code in Iran is a means of oppression, and those in power don't observe it. Don't observe it themselves when they leave the country. Anger accumulated until it peaked in 2022 after the killing of Mahsa Amini by the morality police. Technology brings money for those who control societies. However, they can't expect that the consumers of technology can be suppressed forever. So what I want to say is, this new generation wasn't just born revolutionary. They learned throughout their lives that they have to fight for freedom. This revolution needs international support. International powers are behind this regime. We need people's power, and we have to try to bring their force behind this revolution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nasrin. Thank you for your time and your expertise. I'm now going to play a video from our next speaker, Mino Hemati. Mino is a producer and host journalist at Rahaijan TV. Unfortunately, we couldn't have Mino speak live, but we do have a wonderful video. So I'll just share my screen with you all to watch.
Is this revolutionary uprising? We have Hello everyone, thank you so much to invite me, and this is my honor to be here for today, International Women's Day. A movement of women life freedom with the code name of Mahsa Amini was a dream for the older activists of the Emancipation of Women movement, which they had in mind since the beginning of Islamic rule in Iran. A women's revolution led by the generation of young women side by side with young men to challenge and bring down the ruling Islam system, its most reactionary anti-woman government in contemporary history. The images of girls and young women wearing the forced hijab along with dancing and stomping in Iran cities were broadcast to the rest of the world. The iceberg of false propaganda by the Islamic regime's media and lobbies abroad regarding women's obedience to Islamic law and regulations melted overnight, and the real face of the protesting and revolutionary movement was revealed. A woman who realized her human and egalitarian identity and will not be burdened by religious, ethnic, and gender discrimination. During these few months that have passed since this revolutionary uprising, we have witnessed the united struggle of men and women throughout Iran with cries of support for each other in confronting the brutal forces of the Islamic regime and to overcome it. What the public opinion of the world did not know was that the majority of women in Iran never accepted the Islamic ruling of the rulers, and the resistance against the compulsory hijab has been one of the clear and public manifestation of the struggle against religious tyranny, which has now erupted like a volcano after 44 years. For the first time in the life of the Islamic regime, Iranian living abroad have stepped into field of struggle in a large scale and are engaged in gaining solidarity and support for the struggles of the Iranian people in their countries of residence. The main force to isolate this regime and force the expulsion of diplomats and its spies from Europe will be the labor union, educators, women's organizations, and human rights defenders. Just as the Danish Dockers Union were the initiators of preventing the loading of ships of the apartheid regime of South Africa. And quickly, in all the ports of the world, the Dockers unions joined these sympathy strikes to paralyze the apartheid regime of South Africa. With trickery and lies, the Islamic regime has positions its representative in international forum as representative of the Iranian people. Evicting these criminals who violate human rights from these assemblies is the duty of every conscious and humanitarian person. Fortunately, the expulsion of the representatives of this apartheid and misogynist regime from the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women was done successfully. This victory will be an important springboard for further actions. Girls' schools have been one of the centers of students' protests against the anti-woman system as a whole. It's not surprising that the secret agent of the regime take revenge on female students with organized chemical attacks in a large number of schools in different cities. So far, it has left at least 1 dead and hundreds of injured. By leaving the hands of this Islamic fascist group free, the Islamic government proves that these terrorist attacks of this scale are only possible with the government's assistance. The police forces of the regime also attack the mothers of the injured students to silence their protests. We must be their voice. For many years, the emancipation of women movement, shoulder to shoulder, with the labor movement, the student movement, the movement of educators, medical staff, and environmental activists, has challenged the Islamic regime, and the Emancipation of Women television has tried in the last 20 years to be the sound and image of these movements. Now that the torch of these movements have been handed down from generation to generation, and now it has been raised in the hands of the young and have generation of women, its effects can be seen in women's struggle all over the world. The previous generation were also enthusiastic about the main slogan of the revolution, which is woman, life, freedom, and equality, and is repeated in every corner of the world in different languages. It has been the sources of energy for women's equality struggles from Afghanistan, Iraq, Lebanon, and Turkey to Western countries. Our struggle for emancipation of women, life, freedom, and equality will take a long path that requires the solidarity of freedom-loving and egalitarian people around the world. I hope this March 8, International Women's Day in 2023, will strengthen the foundations of this global solidarity and bring our people one step closer to victory over anti-women forces. The victory of this movement will certainly accelerate the egalitarian and revolutionary movements of women in the region. Long live women, life, freedom, and equality. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that wonderful video, Mino. Thank you. And we share with you the last thought that you have. We do hope that this International Women's Day we will all see the contribution of everyone to come together and in solidarity with women in Iran. So our next speaker is Sajia Sojaei, and who is an Afghan filmmaker. I'm going to hand over the floor to Sajia in a moment. Sajia, you are with us. Thank you so much. Do go ahead and please take the floor.
Thank you for inviting me. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me here in this beautiful program. In the name of the knowledge, hello, Excellency, friends of the International Women's Days. First of all, I would like to congratulate the Women's Days only to those countries that have made progress. Everyone knows about the situation of Afghanistan, so I refrain from showing congratulations, and I don't like this kind of congratulations. But I want to share the aspiration of my aspiration of the woman through my some few sentences. Women's rights are human rights. I want to breathe and speak freely. I want to write and sing freely, which we don't have these all rights. I want to walk and travel freely. I want to fly on the sky freely, but we don't have this right. I'm tired from proposal of man. I'm tired of mandatory coverage. I'm tired of forced marriage and child marriage. We had the last full of look of man. We want from society the stop violence against women and stop physical and psychological violence. Because I'm daughter, I'm sister, I'm mother, I'm wife, and most important, I'm human. Without woman, man is not complete. Both woman and man are complementary. Let's be together in this beautiful protest, woman, wherever you are. Today is not day for congratulation because we don't have, especially we Afghan, we don't have congratulation day. We don't have happiness for this day. We don't need gift. I don't like gift. As an Afghan woman, we don't like go to party for take some gifts or flower from husband, brother, father, or whatever from society. We don't have, because we don't have basic rights like education. See the situation of Afghanistan. Our girls, after class 6, they are not allowed to continue their school. In 7th class, they are banned. They are not allowed to go to university. They are not allowed to go to park. They are not allowed to go to place without man. So these are our big problem for women. Sorry. So these days we need to be together, our hand from all over the world, to be together only to make a great protest for taking our right. So I hope one day we can receive all our rights and basic rights like education and the other important things. Now I want to share with you a piece of my poetry that I wrote it 16 years ago about my people and about my country, especially about women. The name of this poetry is Elahe, tulip. I would clean smoothly, like a fountain clear. Make a fountain in tulip roots. Oh, tulip, oh, woman of my country, you are asleep. Wake up. You have been broken. Rise. A light seen from far. Hurry up. It's too late. Get up. Take the torch of light. Be bright. Remind you with crying. It's thundering. Wake up. Be like roaring fountain. Oh, tulip. Oh, ladies of my country. Oh, ladies of the world. There is no place in grace. Farms are full of thorns. That attacks you from far away. Sometimes they kill you and sometimes they eat you. And you that have the last breath is still surviving. You're surviving with nothing and limping badly. How long? How long limping? Shield your body and take the axe to wipe up the thorns from graceland. With different color of tulips get together. And today is the day togetherness. With different color of tulips get together. Make the garden full of tulips, filled up with roaring and cheering. Tulips must sing the song with freedom, with various melodies, and to be flourished, till the soulless and dry land to be full of the shiny flower. In this beautiful day, I wish to all women of the world, shiny future. Thank you.
Sajia, thank you so, so much for your contribution. And I think I speak on behalf of everyone when I say your poetry blew us away and it was very, very moving. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Our next speaker is Shukria Barakzai, who is an Afghan politician, journalist, women and human rights activist. Shukria, I hope you are here and can hear me. I'm going to ask you to switch on your video and to unmute yourself, and please take the stage. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, because I think there are brave women across the globe came together to raise their voices and show solidarity on the occasion of 8th of March, the International Women's Day. To be honest, what was the previous speaker says, it's a time for my country and for women in Afghanistan where we don't have the rights inside of my country to talk about ourselves, our understanding, our situation. But I'm glad the understanding of outside world is also going to raise and to understand the situation of women in Afghanistan. There's no doubt we are living in a very unjust world. Reaching to equality, it's a dream, not only for women inside of Afghanistan, but for the name of humanity. It is essential and important. But let me ask you, dear audience, how much our contribution as a woman changes women's lives inside of our country and outside. I hate to see women as an object, and this is how the word is. I'm fed up. I'm fed up to see how women are going to be in a prison under the name of religion. I am tired enough to prove myself as a human being and not as a second or third citizen in my country. It's the struggle in the journey that my generation and previous generation and younger generation are carrying on. For those whom they live in a prosperous world, they are facing a different type of challenge, but at least they are not going to be neglected from the entire society and life. Inside of Afghanistan, life is very difficult and tough. Why? Because the de facto authority are ignoring and erasing systematically women inside of Afghanistan. The systematic gender-based violence is a type of formal policy where they are carrying on. The de facto authority of Taliban or eliminating women not only from the rights of education and work, but even which kind of lifestyle they like to have inside of their houses. Despite of outside of the house also is not very pleasant. If you see the rise of violation of human rights, domestic violence inside of Afghanistan, the absence of justice, the absence of the institution that women can go and complain, the lack of free press, and the lack of opportunity for women, particularly those women which is they are the bread owner of their own family. As a single mother, as a young daughter, they have the responsibility to carrying on. It is very difficult. So this year we are celebrating in 2023, the 8th of March, where more than millions of women across the globe, just for the big politics, paying the price for those countries where they never believe women's rights and human rights. It's sad to see under the name of different religion, geography, race, political positions, which continent we are living, we are seeing a systematic discrimination, not only for women in Iran, Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, Palestine, but women in Ukraine also are in a terrible situation. War is ugly, no matter under which form is coming in what country. But right now, allow me to say Afghanistan is not safe and peaceful or secure. The absence of war doesn't make to count the country is safe. None of the countries and none of the states could call themselves they bring safety, security, and peace unless as women are not feeling themselves safe. They are not participating. They are not active, playing active role in their society. The gender apartheid is in front of billions of people in the world is going and implementing inside of Afghanistan. But everyone just with an empty statement showing their solidarity, their sorrows. We are fed up. We need understanding. Only solidarity, only beautiful, but statements cannot change anything in the life of women inside of Afghanistan. I think it is important for women, for all of us, to wake up and understand who we are and what is our responsibility and duty. In the name of globalization, in the name of democracy, in the name of human rights, in the name of extremism, in the name of Islamophobia, in the name of modern Islam, in the name of Christianity. And there are so many things are playing with our life, with our rights. And this is the time that we have to show our solidarity. Not only as a sisters, we should stand together and be voice of each other and echo what exactly as a human, as an equal human in our society to man, what we are need for, but to show our strength and find the right path and way and have a faith about ourselves. I don't want to speak more because the reality in my country is not easy for everyone and anyone to understand. We've been through a lot of difficult times, and still I'm proud to say women in Afghanistan, and starting from yesterday, today, and tomorrow and day after, they will raising their voices inside and outside of the country to show they are alive, to show none of the totalitarian regime can eliminate women from the society. They eliminate us from political power. They ignore us. But I hope others, where they are saying they are supporting women's and they are with women in Afghanistan, should give us political identity and political floor. And then they can keep and watch what Afghan women are capable for. I'm very grateful for every single individual voices that comes out under the name of women and for women. Together we are stronger. Thank you. Happy International Women's Day.
Thank you so much, Shukria. And we wholeheartedly agree with every word that you are saying and stand in solidarity with the women and girls in Afghanistan. Thank you for such a powerful contribution today. I am going to introduce our last speaker. I feel like I could sit here and listen to our amazing speakers all day because there is so much expertise, knowledge, and just moving words coming out from this conversation. And I'm really looking forward to the discussion that we're about to have when our final speaker, Nazira Mehmari, takes the stage. Nazira is IKWRO's operational manager, and I will post Nazira's full bio in the chat. Please go ahead, Nazira. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Payzee. It is real a pleasure to be here among all amazing women here. It is lovely to be here, and beforehand I will say Happy International Women's Day to everyone. As Shukria said, together all we are much, much stronger. So I'm just looking back a little bit of the history of the International Women's Day. The first Women's Day celebration took place in Chicago on March 1908 and was organized by US Socialist Party of 1,500 participant women who demand economic and political equality, which we still see this in many of the country actually. Furthermore, the European socialists soon followed suit. No need to mention the socialists had long argued that women's liberation would only materialize under socialism. 8th of March is always associated with the memory of fight, struggle with for the woman in for the working class woman. The woman still doesn't have the equal right. We've seen this in last 200 years, which I could strongly say that's some of part of the world more or less still the same. There has been, I believe, two important issues with the women's movement. One is the women's always fought and fight for the equal right with the men in society, and in the other hand, working class women who, in addition to this fight, they are fighting for equal right, fight to better life, more suitable work, equal wages, and fight for the better world, have a guardian for the baby, or many other. We are still fighting for better world and women's equal right. Now, March 8 is marked in where it it seems I've lost the word, in many ways around the world, and is celebrated across the globe. In many developing countries, women activities take to the street to voice their call for gender equality. We're going back, look at the Iran. In Iran, when the Islamic regime came to power, the compulsory hijab was one of the main pillars of the religious dictatorship. So women's body have become political. In Iran, on March 8, 1979, thousands of women protested against the gender discrimination. One of the biggest banners that they carried, the woman at the time, it said and written, women's right is universal. It's not Western, it's not Eastern. And since then, the fight continued to change the regime. Every year since that, women in Iran lead to celebrate International Women's Day in many of the city in Iran, and I could say most of the city in Iran. But unfortunately, always has been consequences to them. They've been arrested, police attacked the event. They, in fact, I actually spoke with a couple of women in my city where I grew up, and if we had the discussion about the International Women's Day for this year, and she said actually we've been informed that any event should be banned, and even if police find it, they will be arrested. So they are looking to how to organize some event that be celebrating International Women's Day and, in fact, the raising of women's rights in Iran. What we see today in Iran is a revolution episode. When women in Iran have always played a central role in movement space before and after so-called Islamic Revolution. The movement is led by women, as have all of the before movement in Iran, all the women movement in Iran as well, that's been led by women. The reality is the recent movement is very significant and has crossed all sorts of lines of society. The woman's life freedom slogan is evidence of Iranian participation from a cross-class background demand for a regime change. What the whole world is witness today is generation of women under the barbaric regime who are fighting for freedom. The truth is this movement never was silent and always were fighting for equal right. I am not repeating because the other wonderful speaker, Nasrin Parvaz, mentioned the chemical attack to the student in Iran. All the students in those school who had demonstration, who had fighting, who had picket line, who came out and raised their voice. Now they've been attacked by the government with the chemical, and they've been, a few of them has been actually dead. I could just mention in the last sentence that experience that I had, and actually with Diana and our generation in Iran back then, when Islamic regime to come to power, we as myself and many other socialist women and fighter, we never accept Islamic law and the regime. We stood against this regime and organized our fighting with men and women and said a very big no to Islamic regime. But what we see now, we never seen before. We know that's, as Nadia said, changing of the Islamic regime of Iran, it will change whole Middle East. And that is the big change, and will be different world, definitely, especially for women. And I'm very honored to be part of this revolution, even I am outside the country, but I will do everything in my power to support, to be part, to whatever it takes. And talking to people in Iran, as I know, and the rest of the leader, amazing organization, amazing women outside Iran, different country. This is the solidarity and support with especially women in Iran that will be definitely success. And we always say that a revolution in Iran will start by women and will lead by women, and it will be women's revolution. So I will stop here. I know I am the last person, and people are perhaps tired to listen to me as well. So I will say Happy International Women's Day. And I will say women's life freedom is our slogan as well. So thank you very much, IKWRO, for organizing this event, and thank you, Payzee.
Thank you so much, Nazira. What a wonderful way to end the speakers. So I just want to say again, thank you to all of our amazing speakers today. We so appreciate your time, your energy, and your expertise that you have given to this conversation. Before we go into the Q&A, just a reminder for anybody who has any questions from our wonderful audience, please do pop them in the Q&A. We already have some questions, so if you'd like to add to that, please do go ahead. So we're going to go into some resolutions from this conversation. What is it that we demand happens, that we request happens and want to see as actions? I'm going to pop these into the chat afterwards as well, but I'll just read them one for now. So we suggest the following resolutions. Number 1, we condemn the Islamic regime for allowing chemical attacks on schoolgirls to continue terrorizing the people of Iran. Number 2, expel the criminal Islamic Republic of Iran from the UN Human Rights Commission immediately. Number 3, support women, life, freedom as a movement in Iran by expelling all Islamic regime diplomats from your countries. Number 4, we demand the immediate release of all political prisoners in Iran. And number 5, we demand the immediate abolishment of the death penalty in Iran. Signed by IKWRO Women's Rights Organization and the Organization for Emancipation for Women, Rahajan TV. Thank you so much, everyone, for being part of this wonderful conversation. We are now going to go into a Q&A. So if I could please ask all of my wonderful speakers to come onto the screen again so that I can see you all. And we're going to start with the very first question that we have. And please do feel free, anybody who would like to answer this question, you can either just raise your hand or let me know you want to speak and I'll give you the floor. So the first question that we have is, what can people in UK do to support women and girls in Iran? Is there anybody who would like to answer this question?
Payzee, we cannot, we are unable to start the video, it says.
Oh, okay. Let me just go ahead and make sure. I see Nazira and I also see, oh, someone else has disappeared. Okay, let me try to ensure. I see Shukria on my screen as well. So I'm just going to make sure that I have Elahe who can start her video. Also Nadia. Diana, you should be able to start. Okay, I can see you.
Oh, yeah.
See you now. Thank you so much. I will also see if Mino, we have Nasrin as well. So the question we had, that very first question was, what can people do in the UK to support women and girls? So what do we suggest as actions?
Shall I start? Maybe.
Please, Anna, if you would like, yes, please.
Thank you. I think this is a question actually not just for the UK, but for the whole world. And I think we can do many things here, especially in terms of, we can see that the execution in Iran, it's now become a huge problem. Every day, government execute people or kidnap people, and then after a few days, they can, family or other people can find the dead body, of their beloved people. So I think one of the very important issue is everyone around the world can force their government to put pressure on Iranian government to stop immediately the execution or kidnapping people or killing people. And so I think this resolution is important, especially in terms of putting an end, immediate stop of execution in Iran. And the other thing, it is again, another demand is free all the political prisoners in Iran. I think this is immediate issue that can be done. And I think we need to get support from the countries, from the unions, worker unions, from the women organization, ordinary people, and many people are really very upset with the situation in Iran and they want to support, so we need to bring them together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana, for your answer there. Really, really useful. And I hope people took note of those actions. I see Nasrin has her hand up. Please do go ahead if you want to contribute, Nasrin. Thank you.
Thank you. We need to communicate with people here to let them know what's going on in Iran, because the media doesn't report what's going on in Iran. And if we can communicate with people here, they will put pressure on the Western government to stop negotiating, to stop talking, supporting the Islamic regime. But the problem is the media, which is the only way we can talk to people, the media has closed their doors to us. I wrote an article about extrajudicial execution in Iran, and I sent it to perhaps 30, 40 newspapers and radios, TVs. None of them answered, just one, and that one is someone told them to contact me, and I mean, they don't want to report because the Western governments are supporting the regime. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Nasrin. And absolutely, we do agree. The media is playing a huge role in censoring the information, which is vital for the movement that we are seeing in Iran, and it's how we've all been able to actually support and lend our voices. So the media does play a huge role. Thank you for mentioning that. Nazira, please do go ahead.
Thank you. To add to this too, that Diana and Nasrin said, I think social media as well play a big part. So we know that in past times regime will ban internet or reduce all the internet and social media inside Iran. So whenever we receive any information from inside, so we should be able to share it, and we should be able to share it among as many as we can on the social media, from Twitter, from Facebook, or whatever technology we have. So that is very important. It's just to add that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Nazira. Absolutely. We have to all be part of sharing this information. So you are right, in whatever way that we can. We're going to move on to our second question. I see that some of our panelists, unfortunately, are having some trouble connecting to their video. So we are trying to sort it out in the background. So the second question that we have is the recent information that we are hearing on poisoning girls in schools. Can someone talk us through what is happening? Of course, really devastating news. Is there anyone who is part of the conversation today who would like to talk about this a little bit more, and I suppose raise some more awareness amongst our audience today, because it is very important and devastating to see. Go ahead, Nasrin, please. Thank you.
Yes. You know, by the end of November, the regime started to poisoning schools, and it's mostly girls' school. For example, the day before yesterday, about 69 schools were attacked, and 7 of them were boys and the rest were girls' schools. I must say, about 17 years ago, the similar things happened in Chechen schools, girls, and by the Russia. So it's similar, and the journalists that who reported on this poisoning was killed in Moscow. She was killed in Moscow. I mean, it's and what's happening when students feel something rotten, smell something rotten, and then they cannot, they feel sick, they cannot walk, they feel their hands and legs are numb, and they vomit. So we don't know the number of killed children, but we know one 11-year-old Fatima Rezai was killed after being poisoned. Yeah, I'll let the other women talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Nasrin, for your insight and sharing how others are impacted, for even just telling us about what is happening in Iran on the ground, and how devastatingly impactful it is even for journalists who are being targeted as well. Thank you so much. I think Diana's hand was up next. Please do go ahead, Diana.
Thank you. I think what the government aimed is really to keep children away from school and push them back to go home, and also punish them as the Khamenei, the supreme leader, asked for it a few days ago. He said that there is nothing for children, they are nothing. We just can punish them and send them home and teach them how to behave. So I think it is what he said. And after that, this poisoning has started. That means when they are at home as an individual, so the demonstration and organizing them for demonstration, it will be much harder. When they are at school, they can communicate with each other, and of course it will be much easier for them to demonstrate and organize them, considering the internet still is not very well in Iran at the moment. So it's a way of communication has been closed by government. So it's another way to take them away, push them away from this uprising revolutionary, which students and especially young people had a huge role, and especially girls. So I think this is a way of government to, in the continuation of oppressing this uprising, revolutionary uprising, next to the execution and arresting people, poisoning is part of the punishment that government do for girls and boys at the moment. This is what I can just say for now.
Thank you, Diana, so much for your contribution. Nazira, would you like to go ahead?
Thank you. I think it's, as we said, is this revolution is women's revolution, as the movement started with the women, and we've seen more and more women in university, school, street being attacked. Few years back when it was uprising in a few other cities, the government started to attack via acid to women. And that was one of the other thing. I think it's because the government wants to stop, especially women, to come out to the street to fight for their right. This is the way that they will attack. Even in demonstration that was on the street for a few months constantly since September. What they did, actually, they were attacking people, but they were especially attacking women's eyes, for example, or face. So this is one of the things that they wants they wants to push women back home, as Diana said, and the children, young girls in school as well. And this is the way that they want to everyone get home. That is the start, and after that they will attack more and more. Thank you.
Thank you, Nazira. Mino, would you like to jump in? Sorry, Mino, you are on mute. We can't hear you yet.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Beside of what all of the speakers says, I agree with it. Just I want to emphasize of the role of the girls' school, which have been one of the centers of student protest against the anti-women system as a whole, if we want to see the whole picture. And I just want to emphasize the of the regime taking revenge of the female. The revenge is important in this picture, and it's not just that they are trying to poisoning the student. At the other hand, the police forces of the regime also attack the mothers of the injured student. And the reason is they have to make them silence, and they are trying to not they control them not to come back to the protest again to the street. And those 2 points, I think, is very important, and we have to really focus on what the police and what the regime is trying to do it in this situation, in these past 6 months.
Thank you so much for adding to that, Mino. Thank you. So the next question that we go to is, how can audiences...
Payzee, Shukria's hand is up.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see. Thank you so much. Shukria, please do go ahead and unmute. I've tried to ask you... Oh, here we are. I can see you now. Now you're on video. Please do go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to add a few things. Well, the first one is just a request. Since this is 8th of March in Women's International Day, I'll be more than happy on the statement if you mention the name of Afghan women, because I think the situation of Afghan women is not at all better than the situation of women in other parts of the world. So what we are experiencing even more dangerous. But I have a concern. We are neighbor, Afghanistan and Iran. And the impact of Taliban regime at the moment we can see in some part of our neighbor countries, for instance, in Pakistan, like the same mentality is going. Since all type of those Taliban or Iran regime or other Islamist groups are against women's education in general, and particular against girls' generation. It might be a part of formal policy of the government that under one or another name they are going to implement it. But it's just a question. Do you have a fear if the regime of Iran is applying the same as Taliban? At the moment, it's not a part of their formal strategy to eliminate women. I'm following all the news from Iran, and I understand the situation over there, and my solidarity, sympathy, and condolences for what a tragic situation when the girls, students are facing at the moment. But this poisoning take me back when I was a student, poisoning or throwing poison and acids. These are the things that the facts that they are trying to keep women a sideway and sideline from all kind of activity. Don't you think it might have another type of room for the next step, which will be more harsher than what girls and students are facing at the moment?
Nazira, would you like to add to that?
Thank you, Shukria. I think it could be a yes and no. The regime of Iran, when they came to power in the first few years, they closed all university for 3 years. So if they could, they would definitely act worse than Taliban, to send all the women home, to not allow them to educate it. I think I mentioned that women in Iran, they never accept the Islamic regime, and I think Nasrin mentioned on her speech as well that it was 2 different way that they life they had, one in private, one in public. So if women in Iran didn't fight back in first moment that the regime came to the power, they could and they would do the same thing. But with the fight that we did all years, and I mentioned that every single year that we International Women's Days, there was protest underground or even event that they could do it in the few places that 40, 50 people comes, 100 people comes, university, everywhere they done this. They run the event. And the fight back against the regime, they didn't allow regime to happen. But the fear is there. For now, when the regime attacked this school and the woman, and they want them pushed back home, that like in the beginning that they said that women should be at home, that they don't study, that they close the university for 3 years. But currently, they don't have that power to do it. They will brutally do killing people, arrest them. Whatever that they can do, they will do it. But because the uprising is more stronger, so it's the fight between both regime and people in Iran. I could say that one. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nazira. Before I go to, oh, sorry, Nasrin, would you like to jump in?
Thank you. I would like to say we have a different history. I mean, Iran and Afghanistan have different history. Afghanistan is in the war, or was invaded for so many years, and that I think generation after generation were born in a war situation. First the Russia, then the America went to Afghanistan to give you a democracy, which was bullet. And I think, you know, I remember when Farkhunde was killed by people in Afghanistan. I forgot which town was. It was killed brutally. Sorry, I mean, the history of Iran changed people, not only women, men as well. That's true that honor killing is happening in Iran, though last 6 months stopped dramatically. I mean, with this movement, we don't have that many honor killing in Iran. But I mean, it never happened last 50 years. Something like killing Farkhunde in Afghanistan, and never happened in Iran. I mean, people, not relative, people kill a woman for whatever reason. I mean, in Afghanistan, people were brainwashed that they should live for God, not for themselves, and so on. So, yeah, I wanted to say it's partly what Nazira said, that it's a struggle against Islamic regime, and partly is what history give us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nasrin, for your final thoughts on that. Before I go to the next question, I have a comment that I'd like to read from someone who's joined our event. So Anne would like to say, this isn't a question, because she would have asked, what can I do here in the UK, which was our first question. However, she says, I would like to thank all of your speakers who are wonderful, stirring international women of action. Thank you for your courage, your important thinking, and for your communication with us today. I have been deeply moved by you all. Completely agree with those words. So thank you so much, Anne. The other question that we're going to address is, how can audiences educate themselves, especially given that there is a lot of misinformation coming out? Are there any reliable sources that you would recommend? If anyone would like to add to that, thank you.
Could you please repeat it? I don't
Yes,
see.
of course. Sorry, Diana, I'll pop it in the chat as well. So how can audiences educate themselves, especially when there is a lot of misinformation coming out? What are the reliable sources? So where can we go to get reliable information around what's happening in Iran? Because of course we know there's a lot of misinformation coming out over the internet and different news platforms. So is there anywhere that you would suggest audiences internationally, in the UK, etc., can educate themselves so they can keep up with real information, accurate information with what's happening in Iran?
I can say really it is very hard and very difficult to find the true information about Iran, because whatever is coming out from the government, of course, Iranian government, whatever they say, it is in their favor, and it is what they want to say, that it's nothing, it's just a few young people that they want to do something wrong, and they have been maybe advised by our enemies from abroad. So it is what Iranian regime says, and what the other Persian TVs saying around, they are trying actually to support the monarchs, and they are all their focus, even they are trying to do fake news to make the monarchies and attractive alternative for Iran. So I think people mainly what we can find from the social media, when I think when the news are from people directly from street, they are filming and giving information, maybe it's the most reliable information. Otherwise, there are, everyone trying to give the information in their favor, which is many of them is not based on the reality. I have seen myself, for example, there are TVs like Iran International, which is a Persian one, or Manoto TV, that they went to demonstration which organized by other organization, but they put those demonstration in favor of the monarchs, whereas it wasn't. It was completely against monarchs and against the Islamic regime demonstration. So, I mean, this kind of things they are doing is sickening, and so I invite people really to look for the social media and those films that they are really from the street and from the people themselves.
Thank you so much, Diana. Absolutely, yes. Do not believe everything you see and hear. It's important to do your research. And as you say, the real information is coming out from the crowds on the ground, which is so powerful and so moving. Nazira, would you like to add also? Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's what Diana said, I echo. But I think it's, in the other hand, mainstream media always been pro-government, whatever that they been feedback from the government of the Western or Iran's government, they will report. But there has been some good report on Guardian, for example, on rape and sexual abuse on the prison. So there are a couple other on this school poisoning as well in Guardian. So please feel free to look at it. I think it's the other main event or report is kind of this event that we can really see the reality of what happened in Iran. There has been many of these events that's is people well known, that women's activists, they have interviewed, they have reported on some of the newspaper, radio. So those kind of stuff is really reliable, and we can look at it because those people have the information inside Iran to report it back. Thank you.
Thank
Mino,
you
want
so
to
much. Go ahead, Mino.
Yeah, besides of those information about the social media, I just want to add that the IKWRO has a very good amount of source, very about the special honor killing, about the abusing, and it has a lot of good source news and information. Besides of all those social media guardians, which Nazira just mentioned, that I believe so. So the IKWRO, because it's in English, IKWRO has everything very organized and explaining in English, and everyone can, you know, read it and get the information. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mino. I think with that, we are going to draw the event to a close. We did have some other questions, but unfortunately, we won't have time to go through. Sorry, before I conclude, I think Diana wants to say something. Go ahead, Diana. Oh, sorry, you are on mute.
Sorry, what about Shukria say? I have to say that our organization, we are very, very honored and we'll be happy to work with our sisters, Afghan sisters in the UK and even in Afghanistan. And especially we have got a campaign with emancipations, women emancipation in support of Afghan women. And we will be happy to have you in advising us to take further steps in supporting each other. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be and to work. And I strongly believe, as much as we are united, so together we are stronger. So that's what I believe. And thank you so much for remembering the women in Afghanistan and keeping their struggle also on your mind, because this is the history of women's, and we shouldn't let the history to repeat themselves in a wrong way to the women, not only for Afghanistan and Iran, but in the globe. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for those final thoughts, Shukria. And as Diana mentioned, we would absolutely love to support you and also work together, of course, to be in solidarity with the women in Afghanistan. So just to say finally, thank you so much to all of our incredible speakers. I have personally really enjoyed listening to you, and I'm sure our audience have really taken so much from today as probably a very important event on International Women's Day, because this topic is so important, and it's incredible that you have all given your time and your energy and expertise to mark out this time so that we can have this conversation. And I'm pleased to say it is recorded, so it will be on IKWRO's YouTube channel, so it can be watched back and notes can be taken from that. We really want to thank our speakers and our audience for taking the time today. Please do continue following us to follow this conversation. Our website is www.ikwro.org.uk. All of our social media channels are at IKWRO. And get in touch if you have any questions about this and the work that we are doing. Thank you so much again, and have a wonderful rest of your day, and happy International Women's Day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.